I am calling the meeting of the Landscape Architects Technical Committee, the August 2nd, 2022 meeting to order, and would like to thank everyone. But first, we'll take a roll to establish our quorum. And if Pamela, if you can take the roll, that would be perfect.
Absolutely. Please acknowledge you are present when I call your name. Andrew Bowden.
Aye.
Pamela Brief, present. Susan Landry.
Present.
Patricia Trout.
Present.
John Mersinski.
Present.
Everyone is in attendance.
All right, thank you very much. This meeting is being webcast and pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 11133, a physical meeting location is not being provided. Participants watching the webcast will only be able to observe the meeting. Anyone interested in participating in the meeting or speaking must join the webcast meeting. Information and instructions to join are attached to the agenda, which is posted on the LATC website. Committee members, please keep your microphone muted when you are not speaking. Members should keep their camera on during the meeting. When you wish to speak, please use the raise hand feature or physically raise your hand on the video, and I'll keep looking for that. When speaking, please identify yourself each time. Announce that for each agenda item, there will be an opportunity for public comment. So the public will have an opportunity to ask questions or make comments after. If a motion is on the table, it will come after discussion from the committee. When you wish to speak, please use the raise hand feature. All right, and I would like to thank Ron Jones, our liaison from the California Architects Board. If you are on the call, Ron, excuse me, thank you for attending, and feel free to raise your hand or to ask to speak whenever you are inclined to do so. All motions and seconds will be repeated for the record, and votes on all motions will be taken by roll call. We'll probably take a short break sometime between noon and 1 o'clock, depending on how far we are through the agenda. It'll be probably a short break, maybe 20 minutes, something like that. And lastly, I would like to thank Trish and the LATC staff for doing an excellent job of helping to prepare for this meeting. And I think we're good to go in that respect. So with that, I will ask any of the committee members if you have any comments or anything that you'd like to speak before we proceed.
No comments.
Okay, hearing none. All right. We will move then to item C, public comments on items not on the agenda. And I would reiterate with the public that any comments or questions will not be able to be addressed by the committee at this point in time, but may be brought as an agenda item in a future meeting. Or we may, depending on the question or the ask, may direct staff to work on answering that. So with that, I'll open it up for any public comment.
We are now open for public comments not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no one in the audience, would you like to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. All right, thank you very much. One thing that I forgot to mention is because of some time constraints, we are going to move item G before item F. So I don't think it'll affect anything that's going on in the meeting, but we were asked if that was possible, so that's what the plan will be. So moving on to item D, we will hear from a representative from the Department of Consumer Affairs on what's going on with them.
Hi, this is Trish. I believe Matthew Wainwright is the representative who will provide the update for DCA.
All right, Matthew, we see that you have unmuted.
Hi, Trish, and hi, everyone. This is Matthew Wainwright. I don't have an update from DCA to provide.
Okay. Does that mean that we are through with this particular agenda item then?
John, I wasn't given a name, so what we can do is we'll follow up, and we can come back to this item, and we can move on to the next agenda item to approve the minutes, if you'd like.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, then let's move on to item E, review and possible action on the April 7th, 8th, 2022 LATC meeting minutes. Are there any comments, suggestions, or anything from the committee members? All right, hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve as submitted. Andy?
So moved.
Second. Right. Second.
Pamela
right.
Brief, second.
Okay, Pamela Brief. All right. At this point in time, I will ask if there are any public comments on the minutes.
We are now open for public comment on the minutes. We do not have anyone in audience yet. If one of the panelists would like to say something, they can unmute themselves, but otherwise we should return to the agenda. Seeing no requests, would you like to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. All right. I guess it's kind of mute to ask for any additional comments from the committee members. So I will ask for a roll call vote for approval of the minutes as submitted. And Pamela, if you could take that.
I will, yes. John Rasinski,
Yes.
Susan Landry,
Yes.
Andrew Bowden,
Aye.
Patricia Trout,
Yes.
Pamela Brief, aye. The meeting minutes for April 7th and 8th has been approved unanimously.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And we will now move on to item G, discuss and possible action on the committee's annual budget. DCA Budget Office will present.
Hi. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
This is Trish. I just wanted to introduce this agenda item before Harmony got started. This is our annual update on our program. Harmony DeFilippo is the budget analyst for Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office. And both she and Nishimini will go over the fiscal responsibilities of the program, as well as the current status of our budget. So Harmony, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish, and good morning. My name is Harmony DiFilippo, and I am the budget analyst with DCA, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present the committee with an update on the budget today. I will be speaking to agenda item G and all of the documents that are included. The first attachment is a memo regarding the fiduciary responsibilities of the committee's fund. And my colleague Matt will touch on this a little bit further towards the end of my presentation. So I'd like to start with a quick overview on the fiscal year 21-22 expenditure projections, which is agenda item G2. If you could please share that slide. So this report includes 2021 actual expenditures compared to 21-22 budgeted and projected expenditures. Over this 2-year period, costs increased partially due to the committee's business modernization efforts. For fiscal year 21-22, the committee is projected to spend approximately $1,037,000, of which $540,000 is expended on personnel services and $497,000 on operating expenses and equipment. So you can see that there on this slide. The next slide is your fiscal year 21-22 FM11 revenue projections, and this is item G3. This report includes 21-22 FM11 budgeted and projected revenue, which I will go over a little bit more in our next slide. Okay, next slide here is our fund condition. So the attached fund condition statement is based on the 21-22 Budget Act and has been updated with fiscal month 11 projections. This also includes 2020-21 prior year actual revenues and expenditures, as well as out years, giving you a 5-year view. I will start with the first section, revenues. So the committee began 2020-21 with a fund balance of $1,301,000 and collected $829,000 in revenues, with $83,000 from initial license fees, $724,000 from license renewals, and $22,000 was collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. For 21-22 current year, the committee projects revenues at $810,000, with approximately $81,000 projected for the initial license fees and $712,000 for renewal fees and $17,000 from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. You will notice the revenue is projected slightly higher in budget year and static in the out years. The next section is the committee's the expenditures. So the committee's 21-22 current year expenditures are projected based on fiscal month 11 at $1,037,000. The fund condition projects ongoing expenditures with a 3% growth factor increase per year. The fund condition shows the committee fully expending its appropriation ongoing. I also included an estimate for future business modernization costs in budget year +1 and budget year +2. Please note these are estimates and may change. To the extent the committee does not fully expend its appropriation, any savings remain in the committee's fund, which will help the reserve balance. The committee notes future legislation or other events could require the committee to request additional resources through the annual budget process, which would increase cost pressures on the fund. The last section is the fund balance reserve. The fund balance reserve is the amount of funds remaining at the end of any given fiscal year. The committee's fund has a statutory fund balance limit of 24 months, but typically 3 to 6 months is considered sufficient. I would also like to provide some additional information for the committee on a structural imbalance. A typical structural imbalance occurs when projected revenues are less than anticipated expenditures. The committee's fund balance is currently declining due to a structural imbalance. This is due to increased expenditures outweighing the revenue. The 21-22 structural imbalance is projected at approximately $349,000 and is anticipated to increase and accelerate in the 22-23 budget year, which will cause the fund to become insolvent in 23-24. As previously noted, the committee has historical reversions of at least $200,000 based on the last 4 fiscal years, and the committee has had prior 2021 prior savings of approximately $262,000. However, the committee's costs are projected to increase from costs associated with business modernization. Because current law requires the fund to remain valuable and solvent, the committee is required to rectify these fundamental structural issues. What does that mean? It means that further action is required. The committee will need to take action to reduce or eliminate the structural imbalance to remain solvent. The committee has 3 options to reduce the structural imbalance. 1, reduce spending. 2, increase revenue. Or 3, a combination of both 1 and 2. The committee further notes license fees currently being assessed are set by statute and regulations. The committee's fees are currently set at their statutory maximum. As a result, the committee will need to seek statutory changes to increase fees possibly in the 22-23 legislative session. Committee staff will be working with the DCA Budget Office to identify possible actions to reduce or eliminate the structural imbalance to ensure the committee remains solvent and able to fully meet its licensing and enforcement mandates. Committee staff will also be working with the DCA Budget Office to conduct a fee study, which my colleague Matt Nishimini will discuss further. So before I open up for questions, I would like to introduce Matt Nishimini. Matt?
Thank you, Harmony. I think that was a very good presentation, and I think you covered it. I'm just going to circle back to the memo in your board meeting materials, and that starts on page 33. Perhaps we could bring that up, please. So this memo was actually written for a different board. It was written for the Board of Vocational Nurses and Psychiatric Technicians last November, but it applies to all the programs within DCA. And it was written by one of the senior attorneys, Christy Shields, in our legal department. And this essentially outlines your fiduciary responsibilities as committee members. And one, it'll say that, well, if we look at the first page, the governing laws. So again, this was from last year. So it references the Budget Act, Assembly Bill 128, and that's been updated. It's now Senate Bill 154, but the statutory provisions still apply. And there's also another statutory provision, it's government code, and that's at the beginning of page 2, or I guess it's on page 34 of this, your meeting materials. And together these two different statutory provisions say one is you cannot overexpend your appropriation. So you get a set budget allotment for each year and you can't overexpend that. But it also says that you must keep the fund solvent. You can't overexpend what you don't have. And it actually will go into detail, and you can read this at your leisure, that you guys are actually personally responsible. By signing a Form 700, you guys, this becomes on your official bond, any overage. So it really, when we say the buck stops here, it really stops with you guys. So we certainly appreciate the important work that you guys do and the important responsibility that you have to lead this program forward. Now, that said, I've been brought in to help guide this program, the committee, and work with the budget office to conduct a fee analysis, a fee study. And we know that the mission of the committee is to provide oversight and enforcement of the Landscape Architects Technical Committee Practice Act, while also safeguarding the environment. And so this is a critically important public safety function that you members have. Knowing that about the structural imbalance that Harmony so clearly laid out and the impending insolvency, and knowing, referencing that memo saying we can't become insolvent. And we also know that there are future costs, additional pressures, such as the BizMod IT project. Knowing all of this, the budget office and the staff of the LATC have been in close contact monitoring spending and revenues for over a year now. And there were some project costs allocated.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Those costs will be, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Those costs will be coming down the pipe in the future. So we need to plan for those costs. So earlier this summer, we concluded that in the absence of future spending cuts, that a statutory fee increase would be required to ensure the LATC has sufficient resources ongoing and can maintain operations in the future. So we began a comprehensive analysis of the LATC's expenditures and revenues, a fee study. And the objectives for this study are to ensure that the LATC is fully accounting for all the costs and recovering sufficient revenues for those costs. Now, as you were all aware, there are only a few sources of revenues that the committee charges. You charge exam fees to applicants, you charge initial and renewal license fees. That's the primary sources of revenues. So knowing that, what we're going to do is we are going to, we started interviewing staff and we're going to continue interviewing staff to determine the direct costs attributable to those application costs. We would call those direct costs. And we're going to do activity-based costing models based on the direct cost of those applications. And then we're also going to determine the fair and equitable allocation of all the indirect costs, such as enforcement-related costs or BizMod and any other overhead. So as I said, we started this project about a month ago, and we are going to continue with this study in the hopes of having a completed study for your next November 1 committee meeting. And at which time we'll present the findings of the report, and we'll also provide a presentation to the Architects Board at their December 9th meeting. And upon approval by the committee to seek a statutory change, then we will work with the DCA Ledge Office to seek a legislative change during the 22-23 legislative session with an effective date of January 1, 2024. With all that said, this is a significant undertaking for the committee So we want to take this opportunity to recognize and thank Trish Rodriguez and the Executive Officer of the Architects Board, Ms. Zuniga, the LATC staff, and you committee members for taking this responsibility so seriously. All of your participation is vitally important to the success of this project. And with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
All right, I guess I will start. Would it be a safe assumption that the primary cause of this coming deficit is due to the business modernization, primarily due to that, the costs associated with that?
I would say that that is a significant contributing factor, yes.
All right. Is there, just a second, Andy. Is there a particular reason why the cost for this modernization is being borne primarily by the licensees themselves, rather than the state committing funds to the Department of Consumer Affairs to basically fund this upgrade?
That's a very good question. So the boards and committees and bureaus within DCA are all self-funded by their licensees and typically do not receive general fund dollars. And no program has received general fund dollars for projects like these IT projects in the past. It's all been borne by the licensees.
Right. But at the same time, we don't really have a say in that happening. I mean, we could choose, like you just stated, we either cut revenue, increase revenue or cut expenses. We could simply vote as a committee not to go any further with the business modernization as a way of cutting those expenses, but we know that's not going to happen. So I guess what I'm trying to say is my concern is that we don't really have a say in this. We're now in a situation where we're going to have to probably drastically increase our fees to licensees and licensee candidates in order to offset these costs. And I think that's going to be extremely difficult to justify, given in part that the national organization is looking at direct application for licensing to them, sort of bypassing the fees that we would normally collect in order to vet candidates and establish their qualifications for licensure. So with that, I'll stop commenting at this point and we'll turn it over to Andy.
Thank you very much, John. Okay, we need to kind of go back in history here just a little bit, because if you recall, it's not been all that long ago that we went from, well, we were told that we had too much money in our budget, or too much money, I don't know what you call it, at the months in reserve. That's what it was. We had too much money in the months in reserve. So we were told that we needed to reduce license fees for a, I don't know, two-year period or one cycle period in order to bring that down into what was considered balance. So we did that, and we've only just now upped it back up to the $400 or whatever it is currently for license fees. And now we're being told that we're going to be in a deficit. So I'm a little frustrated that this seems to kind of bounce up and down. We either have too much money, and then we have to reduce fees, which is great. I'm sure everybody, all the licensees really appreciated that. But then we raised it up and the licensees kind of forgot that, hey, we had just reduced fees for a bit. Now we just put them back to where they normally were. And now we're going to tell them we're going to raise the fees. there doesn't seem to be any consistent message that goes to the licensees. And I've got kind of an issue with that, especially seeing how licensure across the country is under attack. So here it is, it's almost like the US Post Office was saying, we're losing money left and right. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise the cost of a postage stamp. And I don't see where I don't see that being a good solution. I do understand, and I agree, John, you're 100% correct. We either have to cut expenses or we have to somehow raise the revenue. And the only way that we really can raise the revenue is to increase license fees, unless we're going to do a bake sale. So, I mean, let's face it, there's really nothing else we can do. So I just would like, and I don't know who this comment would be directed to, don't tell us that we've got too much money in the bank and then we have to spend it. And then when we spend it, you tell us that we now are going to go into a deficit. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And with that, I'm going to stop.
All right,
so
thank you.
Let me chime in first to the chairman's comments about seeking other funding sources. So it is certainly the prerogative of this committee and the LATC to seek legislation that would provide general fund dollars for any purpose, whether it's BizMod or for any purpose. That is in your purview to do. There are some DCA programs in this last budget cycle that actually did receive general fund dollars for programmatic implementation. And so that is your purview to do that. It is traditionally not, we are not a general fund funded programs at DCA, but there are some recently that have received general fund dollars. And so you could do that. You could seek an author and say, hey, we have this IT project and we need $1 million to implement it. And we don't want our licensees to bear that cost. So that would be an option for you committee members to do that. Secondly, to address your concerns about and your observations about the spending, the up and down. So if we look at page 38, the fund condition statement, we can see that in as recently as the 2021 year, it would be the next page, that one. So the far left-hand column at the very bottom, months in reserve, you had 13 months of reserve. You ended that. Now it's trickier when you have a small budget and a small budget, small revenue, small expenditures, meaning under $1 million. Because what seems to be very volatile, any movement, any small movement of $200,000 on an $800,000 budget, or $800,000 on an $800,000, that's 25%. So it's significant. So as recently as 2 years ago, you had 13 months in reserve, where at the end of this year, you're going to be at 3.2. So that's a dramatic downward shift. And your costs have really not gone up that much. You have, your staffing levels are basically the same. There have been some staffing increases that come with the normal budget cycle, but it also is attributed to the BizMod project. So you're going from 800,000 to $1 million in the current year to 1.3 million in the budget year. So your costs have increased significantly. 2 years ago, you were at 800,000, and now you're projected at 1.3 nearly. So that's $500,000. So that's a 60-some% increase. So that's significant. So while I realize you're saying, we're supposed to be spending or we weren't spending, any small shift in your spending, actual spendings are going to have a direct impact and a significant impact on your reserve balance because you're such a small program. Unfortunately, you guys are capped by statute at 24 months. And so at that time, at that point in time, several years ago, it was recommended that you reduce your fee levels to remain within your statutory cap. Once you exceed your statutory cap, you have to cut fees off altogether. So it's much better to plan for that and to keep your operations going rather than to just cut off. And we do that. That has happened where programs have exceeded their statutory cap and they've had to cease collecting revenues for a period of time before it dropped below the statutory cap. So that was a planning thing and a timing issue. So now we're at a point where, yes, you are stabilizing your, you've reduced your statutory reserve balance, and now it's trending downward. At the same time, you have this BizMod project, which unfortunately, or it's part of the modernization. But you could opt to maintain your legacy systems. You could have opted to do that. But the choice was made to, hey, we want to have online renewals. We want to have online functionality, more online functionality. The reality is that the legacy systems are from the 80s. I mean, they're very old, 80s and 90s. So at some point, you're going to have to incur these costs or seek general fund dollars through legislation, which is your option.
All right, Susan?
Thank you. Can you go back 2 slides to the one that has the colored columns? We don't have, yeah. So if I'm looking at down about halfway, 53404, blah, blah, external CP services, external. Budget was 304,000. Year to date, we're only at 32. Over in the orange column, projected to year end is only 68, and it would leave a balance of $235,000. Why is it so much lower than the budget? And if you took the 234 and applied it to this budget summary, we wouldn't have the 151 in a negative.
So Harmony, are you there?
Yeah, so the C&P external is actually where your there are several different categories that are grouped within there, and we are only projecting to the 68,000, and some of that savings is actually from business modernization, our efforts this year, and so that the balance that you're seeing over in that far right column, those all actually get compiled, and at the very bottom is where you'll see that at the end, there is going to be a savings to remain in reserve of approximately 255,000. So that kind of captures each of those categories, what they're budgeted for, and what the actual expenditures are. So we are projecting current year savings. And again, this is based off FM11 projections, so that could change with FM12, slightly up or down. So there is funds that will be added to the reserve balance at the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, so on the chart, two slides forward, the black and white one, where is the carryover?
Okay, so looking at the fund condition, down at the very bottom, you'll see the months in reserve. And so those months in reserve show where, let me pull it up a little bigger on my screen 1 second so I can walk you through it. Okay, so you can see towards the bottom under expenditures, that 1111 line item. So that's where that projection of the 1,037,000 from that expenditure projections carries over onto here. You also have some additional adjustments that are added, and you show the total expenditures of 1,159,000, and you can see that the fund reserve will be at 905,000 with 7.9 months in reserve, and that's ending the current previous 2021-22 year.
So I would just follow up and add, so that savings is embedded in that 1037 number?
I have 1,380,000 for 22-23.
We're looking at the CY 2021-22 column, the second column.
Okay,
Down at the bottom, just above that red 39, that 1037.
okay,
So if that number is going to tie to the pages, 2 pages before, to the second to the right column at the bottom in the orange, overall
Yep.
net total, 1,037,000. That's
Right.
going to tie. So that savings that you identify, that 235,000, is embedded in that 1037. And then I would also just add that that savings that was achieved through the biz mod is going to be rolled forward. It was basically due to project delays in the prior year. And so those costs are coming. And so we're building that into the budget year and ongoing. They're still
Okay.
all part of the project costs.
okay, thank you. And then you said that the only way to get money from general fund would be to write a legislator to put a bill before the assembly, right?
So either house, the Senate or the Assembly, draft bills. And the only way to receive general fund augmentations is through a legislative change. So it would either be a bill drafted by an assemblyman or a Senate member, or carried by the administration.
Okay, and I thought the state had a huge surplus this year. Don't they?
Well, that's my understanding from the, just from the news, but we don't track, our office doesn't track the general fund. DCA does not historically receive general fund dollars. We're all special funded. So of the 37 or so programs, nearly all of them receive their funds from the licensing revenues from their licensees.
Okay, I think most of you know I'm on the Campbell City Council, and I know all my local assembly and senate for the state. And if you could send me some language of what it would be to request that. And my thought was that this upgrade that we're having to do would be the thing to ask for in any kind of Senate or Assembly bill. And if you would be able to send me some language that I could forward on to, because they're going to ask me, well, what do you want the bill to say? What exactly are you looking for?
Susan, I think we should probably handle that through the LATC staff and the CAB, that request. And then probably have them look at other boards and bureaus throughout DCA that are interested in possibly asking this and doing something collectively. That's probably going to be the best way to do it. But I will turn it over now to Patricia. I'm sure she's got good questions too.
Yeah, so my questions have to do with BizMod. So, I noticed that we don't have, nothing, I guess, was spent for 2021, 21, 22, or 22, 23. That kind of surprises me. But my real question is this a one-time fee? Or is this something that we're going to be dealing with, like, continuously?
I'm sorry, you sort of broke up. What was your concern about the first part of that?
Is this better? I'm turning up my volume. Can you hear me?
That's better, thank you.
So, I'm just looking at attachment G3, and for 2021, 21, 22, and 22, 23, there was nothing spent on BizMod.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so I'm wondering
So
about
those,
that. Go ahead.
yeah, so the BizMod costs are captured 2 lines up above in the black. So that 1293 right in the middle there, that
Yeah.
1,293,000, that includes your BizMod allocation.
Okay.
That 1037 includes your BizMod allocation. Moving forward, we Harmony put it on a separate line because that appropriation has not been built in. The way state government works, we work on a 3-year cycle. So we work on the prior year, the current year, and we only budget for 1 year. So that's why she's broken it out. So that 116 in the 23-24 budget year, fiscal year, is what she's projecting your costs for BizMod are going to be.
So can we break it out so we can start to track it better? I mean, are you able to tell us what we spent in 2021 for BizMod to the sequential years?
Yes,
So
we could, yeah. Harmony can provide that to Trish. I mean, it's built into that C&P external 2 pages above, but she can break it out into more detail and we can provide that to Trish.
No, it'd just be nice to track it. But my real question here is this a one-time, you know, fee, you know, that you're showing for 23, 24, and 24, 25, or are we going to be, is this something that we need to build into our budget every single year?
Okay, so not with, oh, go ahead, Harmony.
Sorry. So there were costs for business modernization in the current year 21-22, and that is why partially you see that 1111 expenditure that's increased from historical. And as Matt mentioned, the budget year 22-23 also has the business modernization costs already incorporated. And then the estimate is provided for 23-24 and 24-25. Now, as the project finalizes, it will go into a maintenance, and there will still be costs associated, but not the same level of cost to initiate and start the project and implement.
And do we know when, is there any estimate at all on when this will be fully implemented throughout DCA? Because I'm assuming that until that is done, every board and bureau will continue to have to help offset those costs, whether or not the system has actually been implemented for them. Because being one of the first to go through this, my concern is that we're going to be paying through the nose for who knows how long until it's fully implemented, when there's not going to be any continued advantage to us to do so because we're already up and operating.
So, yeah. So every program is at a different, on a different calendar for their business modernization program changeover. You guys, I believe, are in cohort 2. You're part of a group of 2 or 3 other boards, the architects board and a couple of others that are updating and making the migration. You guys actually benefited from the cohort 1, the group, the 4 that went before you. And the costs are significantly less than, say, the projects that we've done in the past. The scale, it really depends on the scale of your program. So like you guys are a much smaller program versus say someone like the contractors licensing board or the nurses board that have $500,000, $600,000 licensees. These projects typically scale with the number of licensees that you have. And so you guys are actually in a lucky spot right now because you are sharing the cost with, you know, the architects board and some of these other programs that are going through right now.
And I will add that I will provide Trish with a detailed update of the exact business modernization costs so that she can share that with the committee.
Yeah, and if that could include any out years as well, as far out as you can take that, even if it's just a guess, it's better to have something than nothing at all. So, Pamela?
Thank you, John. Um, First question, how many cohorts do you have through this process? In other words, like how are you breaking this up in total?
So we're not breaking it up. Each program is coming with a request to do their changeover. So several years ago, the first cohort went through, and I believe it was 4 programs that came to DCA and said, it's time for us to make this change. You guys were part of that second group that came starting, I think, 2 years ago. And I would have to get back to you on who the specific boards are in each cohort.
Okay. I
But
think
everyone's going at their own pace. Some folks have decided, you know what, we don't want to change over, or they are in the midst of planning it. The cohort 3 is in the planning stages, and that will be rolling out.
Okay.
Oh.
And am I correct in assuming that because we fall under CAB, was it CAB's main decision, or was it a joint decision between CAB and LATC to undergo BISMOD?
Hi, this is Trish. That was a joint decision.
Okay, thank you. And is it something that is it possible at this point to ask to slow down this process and therefore potentially reduce some of the expenditures over time and kind of spread this out, or has that ship sailed?
This is Laura. I would say it's not possible at this point because we're in a group with other boards and we signed a contract, we're on a schedule.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Just take a second, just a little bit more history on this. The department as a whole tried several years ago to shift all boards and bureaus to a program called Breeze. And so all boards were paying for that. And that was supposed to provide the new system to replace the legacy systems. About half the board switched to that. It turned out to be, it had significant cost overruns. And then the legislature took more interest and oversight into how IT process worked. And so there is now a state process that you have to go through to get new projects approved. But all boards are transitioning to a new system. We just have more, we had more choice and more ability to pick the system that would work best for us. So we're not going to be part of Breeze. We're going to have a different system. And the LATC is partnering with the board on this with several other programs, in the split between CAB and LATC, I believe, is 80-20 for funding.
Thank you for that clarification. I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Andy?
Yeah, thank you, John. I just had one other, small observation, and that is we have to keep in mind that back in the 90s when we were sunset, State Board of Landscape Architects was sunset. And when we first came up with the LATC, the whole idea was that we were not going to we were not going to take any funds out of the general fund. In other words, we were going to be self-sufficient. And that's what we've always kind of based our argument on as to the value of licensure, because we don't cost the general fund any money. So I'd be a little concerned about going, to try and get legislation done that would provide funds out of the general fund for this business modernization. If we were to do something like that, it would need to be more in conjunction with CAB, I would think. If CAB's not asking for the money, then it'd be somebody that opens us up as an easy target as to, well, then how come you guys need it? If they don't need it, why do you need it? Mm-hmm. So I'm just bringing that up just as an observation. I wouldn't want us to walk away from this thinking, oh, okay, well, we can just go get $1 million from the general fund and go on our way. So it's not quite as easy as that. I wish it were. But I think we do have to realize that costs are going up and our fees stay the same. And so it's only logical that we would have to raise the licensure fees. I hate to see that. And I hate, and I'm sure the licensees are not going to like that, but I mean, everything's going up. So it's just, kind of the way of the world right at the moment. So that's all I'll say about that.
All right, thank you. Susan?
Yeah, following up on what Andy just said, is CAB having the same budget problems that we're having? Are they going to have a deficit?
This is Laura. Yeah, so CAB is going to have a structural deficit as well, primarily due to business modernization costs. CAB has room in its statutory cap to raise its fee, so we can adopt regulations to raise the fee. We aren't going to need the statutory change that LAPC will need. CAB will in the future, and probably in the not so distant future, need statutory increase as well. But the board did vote to initiate rulemaking to raise its fees.
Okay, and the second question, when this comes back, will we know how much we would have to raise the fees?
So yes, that's the intent of the fee study. And we will provide various fee levels, and then it will be a policy decision for you members to decide what those fees should be set at.
I forget, is our fee $400 right now for renewal?
Currently 400, yes.
And how many licensees do we have?
This is Trish. We have approximately 3,700.
3,700. Okay, that'd have to go up quite a lot to make up this. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just have a really quick question. Knowing that that in 2023-24, which is, well, I guess basically a year from now when we're going to be showing a deficit, and knowing how long that it takes any effort to get any kind of legislation through, that's basically a non-starter. So I guess we're faced with some pretty hard decisions starting in November when we get the report and have an opportunity to address that. I'm wondering, just based on the seriousness of this, if it might be prudent to call for a special meeting to specifically address this issue, if that information and the numbers and everything can be pulled together sooner than November. I'm just throwing that out there.
John, this is Trish. Staff can work with budgets, and depending on what the outcome of the fee study is, I'll communicate with you, and then we can assess whether a special meeting is necessary.
All right, thank you. And Patricia, did you have any other?
No, thanks.
Okay. All right. So any other questions, comments from the committee members at this point? All right, well, I will open it up for any public comments.
We are now accepting public comment on the discussion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like to return to the agenda?
Yes, please.
And while we're at it, I might also mention Stephanie has her hand up.
All right. Stephanie, if you'd like to address the committee.
Thank you very much. I couldn't write in the comments. so I put my hand up. Can you hear me okay?
No.
All right, hold on a second here. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you. This was a very interesting discussion. I know that you are considering a special meeting. I think that would be prudent and important for see if we could get some of the licensees and our candidate to participate in this. I think another consideration is to expand the statute to reflect what CAB has, which is a little more flexible, and the statute controls the LATC. And I just wanted to bring that into your realm of consideration. That might be more easily pursued than getting a general fund allocation, just having listened to the discussion this morning. So just wanted to throw that out, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. All right, I guess that concludes item G, unless any of the committee would like to make any type of a motion to direct staff to study this issue, although not sure if that's really necessary.
This is Laura. I'm not sure that you need a motion. The staff is working on this, pretty significantly, and with the budget office, they've been a great help on this.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, that concludes item G. So we will move on to item F, the program manager's report, and I'll ask Trish to present that item.
Hi, John. This is Trish. We had skipped over the DCA update, and we do have a representative from DCA that has joined the meeting, and I'd like to give them the opportunity to present on item D, update on DCA. And Mary Catherine, if you'd like to go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Hi, great. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So good morning, and thank you very much for allowing me an opportunity to provide the Department of Consumer Affairs update today. My name is Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, and I am providing this update on behalf of the Executive Office. The Governor signed Senate Bill 189 on June 30th, 2022, which reinstitutes through July 1, 2023, the remote meeting provisions of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act that were in place during the pandemic. The changes took effect immediately upon signing. Please be aware that DCA wants you to have the right meeting for the business of your committee, and while still taking into consideration both costs and public participation. We are asking boards to still track the costs for their meetings, even those where there isn't travel, and also use WebEx as much as possible to allow the public to attend remotely, especially as COVID-19 numbers continue to rise. DCA is still asking boards to complete the public meeting survey to assist in tracking these costs for your board meetings in order to be able to compare costs for in-person and WebEx meetings, since this legislative change is only in place for this fiscal year. We have distributed the surveys to all boards and bureaus and ask that they be completed within 30 days after each meeting being held. Should you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to DCA. Though legislation has passed allowing remote meetings, we are reminding boards that choose to hold in-person meetings of the safety measures, best practices, and recommendations for holding public meetings. When planning for upcoming meetings, please remember all board and bureau members and staff are expected to follow the state and local public health guidelines that apply in the area where meetings are held. Face coverings are strongly recommended for all board members and staff at meetings. The California Department of Public Health strongly recommends that individuals continue to mask in indoor settings. Please post face covering guidance signage at your meeting and at check-ins or at the entrance. Vaccination and testing, we ask that members do complete this prior to in-person or remote location meetings, and that you submit your vaccination verification to DCA's Office of Human Resources or be subject to COVID-19 testing. We are pleased to announce the inaugural report of the Enlightened Licensing Project is now available, and this was distributed to all boards and bureaus on Friday, May 13th. This innovative and collaborative project was started to streamline and enhance licensing processes by utilizing the knowledge and expertise of subject matter experts within DCA's boards and bureaus. This project was conducted in partnership with the Board of Registered Nursing. After a thorough assessment of some of BRN's licensing processes, the project's co-chairs provided recommendations to introduce new ideas and implement best practices for critical licensing activities. DCA held a brown bag event on June 1st to review the recommendations with all boards and bureaus, as we hope that other boards and bureaus can learn from this report and implement recommendations where applicable. We believe it is so important to learn from one another and to share our knowledge. We will be turning to enforcement next, and we will be reviewing the enforcement process at a board through this enlightenment process, utilizing, again, subject matter experts. DCA also recently held a brown bag meeting with the executive officers and bureau chiefs on July 5th, 2022, to roll out changes to DCA's regulation development and approval process. These changes were also discussed and approved by DCA's executive officer and bureau chief cabinet. DCA shared documentation on the process and changes with all boards and bureaus. DCA is pleased to announce that Nicole Lay was hired on June 24th as the Deputy Director of DCA's Office of Administrative Services. With more than 20 years of state service experience, Nicole has dedicated 10 of those years to DCA. Most recently acting as the Deputy Director of the Office of Administrative Services, where she was responsible for overseeing the business functions of the Human Resources, Fiscal Operations, and Business Services offices. Prior to this role, Nicole was Chief of the DCA Office of Human Resources. She also previously served at the Contractor State Licensing Board and at the Department of Motor Vehicles. We are super excited to have her a part of DCA's executive leadership team. It is with great sadness that we announce some transitions here within Board and Bureau Relations. Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations, left DCA on May 13th. And also Brianna Miller has accepted another position, and she left DCA on June 10th. DCA appreciates the support and service that both Brianna and Carrie have provided to our boards and bureaus. They both were a huge asset to the department. I'd like to assure you that during this transitional period, DCA Executive Office and Board and Bureau Relations will continue to ensure continuity of service to all DCA boards and bureaus. If you all need anything, please feel free to contact DCA Member Relations email or call the DCA office directly, Executive Office directly. The department was recently advised by the State Controller's Office that there will be a delay in processing and approval of travel expense claims until the end of July due to setting up the new fiscal year budget in the Fiscal system. We appreciate your patience, and claims will be processed as quickly as they can once we are able to get the system up and running again. And lastly, board members are required to complete the BMOT within 1 year of appointment and reappointment. The final training will be offered on October 12th, 2022. Members can register through DCA's Learning Management System. And just as a reminder, BMOT is not required for only newly appointed or reappointed members. It's available for anyone that would like the refresher. And if you have any additional questions, comments, or concerns, again, please feel free to reach out to us. And always, DCA is here to help. So if there's anything that we can do to assist, give us a call or send us an email. And that concludes my update for you today. Thank you so much. I will pass it back over to your chair. Thank you.
John, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee members? All right, hearing none, I will open it up for public comment.
We are open for public comment on the matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. All right, that concludes item D. So now we will move to item F, Program Manager's Report, and I'll ask Trish Rodriguez to present this.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Okay, the first item under the July 1st Program Manager's Report touches on the business modernization and status. That project is currently on track. We began initial workshops commenced in May. The first release, which will include automation of the eligibility application, the CSE application, and possible additional applications, if permitted, is targeted for fall of this year. The next board meeting is planned for September 16th and will be discussed under future meetings, agenda item M. The committee developed a new strategic plan at its meeting in April. DCA Solid will work with staff to develop an action plan to complete objectives and achieve the goals over the next 3 years. The plan will be presented to the board for approval at its meeting in September and also be discussed later on in this meeting. During the DCA update, Mary Catherine covered COVID-19. We do plan tentatively to hold a in-person meeting in November, and recommended guidelines are captured below this item on the Program Manager's Report for reference. An outreach presentation was held on April 14th at UC Berkeley. The presentation was conducted remotely via Zoom. 15 students attended and were presented with an overview of the LATC, importance of licensure, and updates to the recent regulatory change, expanding pathways to licensure. Feedback from students is presented in the table. Overall, attendees found the information very helpful. Under personnel, the assistant executive officer position remains vacant. Social media will also be updated later on in this meeting. The current Twitter account that we've maintained for some time now has 224 followers. Staff have been busy with training. They have completed or in the process of completing a skilled enhancement training series, technical training courses as part of business modernization, and also cross-training to back up with administrative duties such as personnel. The website had a few updates on some of our packages, regulatory packages for 2620.5, requirements of an approved extension certificate program. The notice of availability of second modified text was posted on April 1st. Approved documents for the rules of professional conduct, section 2670, posted on April 28th, and the notice of approval of regulatory action for 2615, 2620, that is the package to expand pathways to licensure, was posted on June 17th. Under legislative proposal, Business and Professions Code, section 5659, inclusion of license number. This the The LATC set an objective to educate the different jurisdictional agencies about landscape architecture licensure. There's proposed additional language for this section. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Which would prohibit local jurisdictions from rejecting plans solely based on the fact that they are stamped by a licensed landscape architect. At this time, LATC is planning to resubmit this proposal in the fall to the Senate Business and Professions Committee. Regulatory proposals, section 2611, abandonment of application. This package was adopted and took effect April 1st. Just an update since then that because of the update, because of the approval, staff reviewed all candidate files and identified 864 candidates as inactive for more than 5 years. And so notices were mailed to all identified candidates on July 25th, communicating that their files will be purged due to inactivity. Candidates are given 6 weeks after the mailing of the notice to request that their file be retained for additional time. And then the one that we have all been waiting for, form of examination and in education and training credits. As I mentioned, this expands the pathways, including 2-year credit for an engineering degree, 1-year credit for any degree, and experience-only pathway of 6 years. This took effect on June 8th. Yes. I specifically looked at the camera to see Patricia's Section 2620.5 requirements for an approved extension certificate program. This will be at the end of the Office of Administrative Law's review period on August 5th, so in a couple of days. The issuance of citations, section 2630, and appeal of citation 2630.2. This is currently with the Budget Office for review. Section 2651, waiver of fees for licensure. This package is on hold until we get through our fee study and take a closer look at our budget to determine how to proceed with that package. And then the disciplinary guidelines, section 2680. This went to agency yesterday. So once that gets approved, it'll go through DCA, and from there, we can submit to the Office of Administrative Law. And then attached is the tracking chart, just to kind of capture the updates, a snapshot for everyone. Under the examination, LATC examination program, per the committee's request, we have included the historical layer pass rates prior to COVID was the direction we were given. So you'll see that on the right side of your packet there. The California Supplemental exam results are included for this fiscal year, or this past fiscal year, July 1st, 2021 through June 30th. And then the most for 2021, the table is indicated below. And then we have the layer pass rates, similarly, March 28th through April 9th. And then the comparison with the California applicants against the national applicants. LATC's enforcement program, we currently have received for the current quarter through June, opened at 7 cases. The average days to close is 107 days. The average pending is 102 days. Issued 2 citations, and there's 1 that's pending. That concludes my update. I'm available to answer any questions. And then Stacy will continue with the annual enforcement update if there aren't any questions.
All right, any questions from the committee? Susan?
Yeah, regarding the 2651 waiver of fees for the declaration of emergency, did we have anybody submit it, or we can't do that yet until it's formally approved?
We may not be in a position to do this fiscally, might not be responsible to do this, even though I think it's just recommended in talking with budgets that we first complete the fee study and see where we are before we start waiving any fees.
So no one's asked so far?
Do you mean the public?
Yeah, has any licensees asked for any kind of reduction?
No, I have not. Are you aware of it? No.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? I know I just want to make a real general comment, and I know that just about every meeting when we look at the exam results, that there's definitely some concerns looking at the pass-fail rates, and this time, I think specifically looking at the CSE exam, it looks like there's a very significant failure rate for repeat test takers. And I think that that's something that we need to definitely get to the bottom of. Hopefully when the business modernization is completed for the LATC, we'll have a much better capacity to break down those numbers. As far as the LARE goes, I was really kind of surprised because I was looking at the pass-fail rates, and I noticed that the best success is on grading, drainage, and construction. And I know in the past, that was always the most difficult one to get through. So I'm really kind of curious, what are the questions that are being asked on that one now? But anyway, it's always interesting to look at these numbers and try to guess at what the meaning is really behind those. So I will hold off on requesting public comment until we get through item F, and then take public comments on item F altogether. So if we can move on to agenda item F2.
Okay, Stacy, can you present this item?
Yep, I will present. So this is just the annual enforcement report for the last fiscal year 21-22. Just a reminder that the Department of Consumer Affairs Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative, the LATC's enforcement completion goal for cases not referred to the Attorney General's office is 270 days. And in the fiscal year 21-22, the average time to complete the investigation was 115 days. So we are well below the 270. And then the attachment is just, it includes tables and graphs with types of complaints received during the last 3 fiscal years, comparison of complaints received, closed, and pending, and then comparison of age of pending complaints, summary of closed complaints, summary of disciplinary and enforcement actions, and the most common violations. So we did have a reduction in the types of complaints this last fiscal year. The majority is still advertising complaints. I don't foresee that dropping anytime soon, unfortunately. And then convictions, or I mean unlicensed activity, there is a little bit of an increase in that. And then convictions as well. So you have any questions about the charts?
Any questions from the committee? All right, hearing none, I will open it up to any public comment or questions on item F.
We are open for public comment on agenda item F. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And it looks like we have a request from Stephanie Landgren.
Stephanie?
Thank you, committee members and Chair Washington. I'm Stephanie Landergren. I didn't identify myself the last time. I apologize. I'm a licensed landscape architect in the state of California, and I would like to help a little bit with your question on the retake failure rate. As a former chair of CLARB, when our president, I was something like that. One of the studies we undertook was called the Determinants of Success. In that study, CLARB found that retest takers do more poorly than original takers for two reasons. One is they may not study for the test all the second time, thinking they can just add to it and maybe improve. But the second one is, this is typical in many sports also. Don't change the way you study or don't change the way you prepare. You may make the same mistake. So that was one of the consequences they found of retest takers typically doing more poorly than the first time. And that's a report that's several years old, but I think it's probably on CLARB's website, but I thought I might share that information.
Thank you.
On your comment.
Is that it, Stephanie?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
And that appears to be our only request, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. You can close the comment. All right. We will move on to item H, discussion of 2222 legislation. I will ask Laura Zuniga to, I'm sorry. Yes.
To me, right?
Yes.
Oh, I thought we had discussion after public comment.
All right, I will take.
I think this is correct. We don't proactively pursue any complaints about, or I'm sorry, we don't proactively pursue looking at people that are advertising like on these websites. We wait till a complaint is filed, correct?
That is correct. We don't have the staff to actively search on these social media websites daily or weekly to find unlicensed advertising.
And is it still true that websites are not held accountable for advertising people that are not licensed for performing the services that we do?
To my knowledge, yes, that's still true.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is that it, Susan? All right, thank you. All right, we will move on to item H, and Laura Zuniga will present.
Okay, thank you. So the first item is Assembly Bill 646 by Assemblymember Lowe. This bill is in the Senate Appropriations Committee. This requires all boards under the department that post information on their online licensing system about a licensee's license revocation. If that revocation is a result of a criminal conviction that has been subsequently expunged, to then either post a notification of the expungement order or remove the information from the online licensing system. So any questions about this item? Right. So the next bill is Assembly Bill 1662 by Assemblymember Gibson. It is also in the Senate Appropriations Committee. This would all applicants can request a pre-application determination as to whether their criminal history could be a cause for denial of a completed application for licensure under Business and Professions Code Section 480. So this would set up a new, this pre-application process would be new for all boards and bureaus that currently seek a predetermination. So this bill is moving forward. I think that there has been some discussion about perhaps making it a pilot project for a limited number of boards. So we'll be happy to keep the committee updated as this one goes through the process. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I do have one question. I guess one thing that I was thinking is, as far as this focuses primarily on the pre-qualification question, correct? That they could inquire with the licensing board whether or not a known criminal conviction would disqualify them from being licensed. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And I would say under current regulation, I would assume that any licensing board would basically be doing an investigation on this as part of the regular application process, correct? I mean, they have to become fingerprinted, which includes a criminal background check. So I was always a little curious why separate legislation for something that already exists.
So my understanding of the reason maybe the sponsors or the author are seeking the legislation is to allow people maybe before they go into a profession that requires a certain amount of training, like a vocational program, to find out if before they complete that training, whether they could even get licensed if they had a criminal background. So I understand that intent. I think part of the concern with it is there are time limits usually on how long a board can consider a conviction. So if you ask in advance, well before you're even qualified, the answer could be different than you'd get if you went through the process.
Right. All right.
Thank you. Any other questions on this one? The next one is Senate Bill 1237 by Senator Newman. This makes a fairly small change to existing law. I think as maybe it was referenced in the program manager report, there is the ability for members of active duty military to seek a fee waiver. And so this just defines what active duty is in terms of qualifying for that fee waiver.
Mm-hmm.
So the last one is Senate Bill 1443. This bill and the prior one are in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. And this one will extend the sunset date of both LATC and the board for an additional year, which gives us an additional year to prepare that sunset review report.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments from the committee? All right, hearing none, I will open it up for public comment.
We are now open for public comment on agenda item H, excuse me. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. All right, thank you, everyone. We will now move on to item I. Discussion and possible action on University of California, Los Angeles extension. Yes, Pamela?
John, could I ask we take a quick break before we get into this presentation?
All right.
2 minutes, perhaps?
All right. Why don't we take 5 minutes? Okay. We'll be adjourned for 5 minutes. All right, it looks like we're all back, so we will move on to item I. Discussion and possible action on University of California, Los Angeles Extension Landscape Architecture Pilot Low Residency Program. And I'll have Trish introduce this item.
Thanks, John. The LATC has authority to review and approve the UCLA Extension Program under California Code of Regulations, sections 2620.5. I do want to just quickly divert here and give an update on this regulation since the program manager report that it will be filed for approval on August 4th, and it will take effect on October 1st. So that's great news. And with the adoption of that regulation, the staff will also move forward with publishing a new practice act. So we'll be working on that next as well. So to continue with this, at our last meeting on April 4th, Stephanie Landergren, the director of the University of California, Los Angeles Extension Landscape Architecture Certificate Program, she updated the committee that their program had outlined an ongoing pilot low residency program option. She explained that in response to the pandemic, the program shifted to an online distance learning format. The program considering the adoption of this shift to serve more students, including those who live out of commuter range of UCLA, and interest from former UC Berkeley Extension students to resume and continue with an extension certificate program. So Stephanie is here today. She will present a little more information about this change. There's no action that's required on this agenda item. It's simply an update. And at the next review of this program, the task group that will be reviewing it will consider these changes. So Stephanie?
Thank you, Trish. And, thank you, committee members and Chair. I'm Stephanie Landergren, the director of the Landscape Architecture Program at UCLA. That's usually an easier way to say it. Thank you all for reviewing this. I gave you a report, and I think Ms. Rodriguez gave you a good summary of it. I will really am here to answer any questions. One of the elements, I think, of our desire to expand our reach was the closure of the Landscape Architecture Extension Program at Berkeley.
I'm sorry, Stephanie, we seem to have lost you.
All right, how about this? Is it better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. So during the pandemic, received students who had been in process in Berkeley's landscape architecture program, but were unable to finish it. The uniqueness of this program is that it's an evening and weekend program. It is the only program of its kind for landscape architecture in the West. There is one other program in the United States that we know of that offers a landscape architecture degree or program at all, and that is Boston Architectural College. And it is considerably more cost than ours. And it is present space. And ours is at the moment going to look at how can we reach more students that are within California specifically. And so we have had good success with our students being able to work within the remote setting. And I'm going to define the word remote. Remote is live in-person classes. This is not an online self-paced program, and it never has been. Interaction with other students, drawing and reviewing drawings, and whether it's digital or hand, is essential to what we think are important learning outcomes and learning skills. So we have found during the pandemic that we had many people outside of our local area. We were surprised. We actually received people from Washington and Oregon, as well as we did receive a student who is from Florida. They are aware that our program only meets the licensing requirements in California. Some of these students are hoping to move here to practice, but it's a full disclosure that at the time being that this program only meets the licensure requirements in California. So I hope I gave you a little bit more information to where we're coming from, why we were doing this. I'm happy to answer the questions that the committee might have.
All right, any questions? Susan?
Question to Stephanie. How many students are in your program?
Our program at the moment has a tad over 100. So we're a 3-year program. We have about 30 students in each cohort. Now the interesting thing is that some of them are full-time and some are part-time. So to finish in the 3 years, you need to take 2 classes a quarter. And we do not have a break in the summer. So we're a 4-quarter program. So some of these students are on a slower track than the others because we're accommodating to how people live. Some people are mothers, single fathers. Others are taking care of their parents. We have an older generational attraction. So that is why we have about 100. We don't have more than 100. We go between 90 and 100 per year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, how large do you think the cohort could go to above that within the current constraints of the program?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think my deans called you, didn't they? How many more people can you take? But the reality is there is a limit to the size of a class for it to be effective. If we did expand it, we would have to expand our instructional core, and we are open to that. But I would say the reality of effective online teaching is to have no more than 20 students in class, and I think that's pushing. So if we have that many, when we have our introductory classes, we have our basic drawing class, basic drafting class, 1 class. We usually have 2 classes. They're between 18 and 20 each. We do have an attrition rate because we are academically rigorous, and some people are not used to that rigor, or they're not expecting that rigor. And so we about 10% of our students after the first quarter, and then we lose another 10%, typically that. Then we usually have a strong cohort in the 2nd and 3rd years. So if I do have a very large interest, I will have to increase my instructor core, which is something I would be interested in looking at. But the quality of education is really based upon a personal relationship with the work we're doing with the earth and with our students. And I don't see us being able to increase the capacity of our classes and be an effective instructional institution.
Mhm. All right, thank you. I do have a couple other questions. Are there any other programs within the extension that offer certificates or other recognition with the focus on qualifying for professional licensure? Are you aware of any of those?
Yes, John, there are several. One is we have a paralegal program that is approved by the State Bar of California, and it allows you, and it's similar. It's a 3-year program. It's a commitment of a student for licensure uh, as a paralegal. We also have the only, I would say, interior design or interior architecture program in California, and it is in a partnership with Cal Poly Pomona, and that one is both, it's a foundational program. It can lead to your becoming, I don't think it's licensed, but I think it's an accredited program through the state. It does have licensure in other areas, and they go through a similar accreditation. There's one other certificate program, their accounting program does prepare you to become a licensed CPA. So those are, we do have some professional pathways in our certificates so that but we are the longest program. Our program is 3 years. We're almost 50 years old, which is kind of exciting. So we have been providing education to, you know, adult career changers for a long time. Hope to continue to do so.
Right. And do you know, are any of these other programs kind of changing their model like this program where you're looking at going more mixed or virtual and opening the program to residents throughout California or elsewhere?
Well, the Masters of Interior Architecture and the Foundation Interior Architecture are interior design has gone to be fully remote. They're not doing what I would consider a hybrid. They don't need to go outside. They don't need to be on the earth. They don't have a relationship with nature, and I'm probably getting killed over that I know of. So that is what I see. The uniqueness of our program is it would be great if we could just go fully online. And there are some programs there, and they're fully online. They're not remote. But our students have expressed to us that it's not just the camaraderie, but the understanding of the space. So important to be present in that space. Google Earth is not up to date. As we all know, if you hire a landscape architect who's never been on your site, you're not going to get a really, I would say, site design. And we have found this to be true, and we're trying very much to see if this will work. Most of our students love it. Some of them wish that it was fully online, but they can go up to San Francisco and take a fully online program if that's what they want. But we have, as you read in the report, I hope that you saw that we still have, we're discussing how many on-site classes are appropriate. Some classes may only need 2 on-site classes, and some may need 3. What is the experience we're hoping to teach in an on-site class? And as you all know, site assessment is so important to have to begin a project. Secondly, I think important to go back more than once because we're not all brilliant in recorders. We don't see everything the first time, but the second, to take photographs, and then also to look at the natural process. Many times if you're looking at just an aerial photograph, you don't see the fact that after a rain that's a severe flood? How do you respond to that? So for us, I think we are trying to be responsive to the curriculum so that we can make sure that we are on site when it is most important in the process of the class. And that's been the dilemma of trying to make sure that our students who are taking 2 classes aren't expected to be here every week. Because if we're going to have outside of the local area, how do we respond to make sure that we are accommodating them at the same time we're accommodating the learning project? I may have gone on too long. I'm sorry, John.
No, that's
I
fine.
answered your question.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do have one more question, and it's in regards to any students that might be entering the program from outside of California. And my question, I guess, is kind of focusing on their intent. If they're looking at obtaining the certificate in order to qualify for licensure, at least in California, have there been any indications at all with them in regards to if they get the certificate here and then decide to utilize that to qualify under their education requirements for licensure in their home states after adoption of the uniform standard by CLARB?
I believe that there is that desire on some of those students. We just recently had a young woman from Montana who was very interested in pursuing our program. Montana is vast and has probably more cows and oil than people. So getting even somebody to be your mentor there or to internship has been an issue for some of these students. So I see us being an attraction for an occasional person who might actually be older and wanting to have the education, maybe even having worked for somebody ahead of time to pass the exam, that they can't travel to the larger city where the university is. I see us serving an interested population. I don't know yet. This is the first year we've tried it, so we haven't really, because it was a pilot, I haven't broadcast it widely because as required by the Practice Act. I want to and need to have you all understand what we're doing, have your guidance and sort of blessing, since maybe not going to be an approval. But then we also will see the product of these students in the review that comes up in 2025.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. And I think speaking for the committee, we have always been firm supporters of this program, and we'll probably fight to the death to protect it. So with that, if there's any more comments or questions from the committee, hearing none, I will open it up for any public question or comment.
We are open for public comment on agenda item I and will be displaying instructions momentarily. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a second now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. I would like to call for a 20-minute lunch break. Is that agreeable to the committee? Okay, do you think we should go longer, or will 20 minutes suffice?
I'm okay with 20 minutes. This is Pamela.
Okay, it looks like that's agreeable. So we will be in recess until roughly 12:25. All right, thank you. All right, I have 12:26 and we will reconvene the meeting. We will move on to item J, review and possible action on draft 22-24 strategic plan. And I will ask Trish to present this item.
Thank you, John. So at the last meeting, it was a 2-day meeting, the second day being our strategic planning session. The LATC participated to update the plan for another 3 years, as John mentioned, 2022 through 2024. It was facilitated by DCA Solid. We developed objectives for 4 goal areas, including regulation and enforcement, professional qualifications, public and professional outreach, and organizational effectiveness. After the planning session, staff worked with Solid to polish the draft plan, and I also then worked with John in just confirming the objectives were as intended by the discussion of the committee. And so the draft agenda is presented here for the LATC to review and recommend for board approval at their next meeting.
All right, I will open up the discussion to any of the committee members. Andy?
Well, looking it over, it looks very good. I mean, it looks, like what we had discussed at the last meeting. And so I would be wholeheartedly in favor of adopting this. I don't know if we need a motion to do that.
I'm not sure either. I guess we could do one.
This is Trish.
This is your legal counsel.
Go ahead.
This is your legal counsel, Michael Knotes. Yes, the board would need to take action to adopt the plan via motion.
All right.
So if you're accepting motions, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I will ask for a motion.
I will.
Hang on, point of order. I think you have to open the public meeting before we make a motion.
This is the moderator. I'll leave it to legal counsel, but I suspect the answer is you can take public comment before, but you can also wait until after a motion and a second is made to take public comment.
Right.
Yeah, this is Michael. We can have public comment now, but once a motion is made, seconded, and once there's committee discussion, we would also need to open for public comment on the motion before a vote. So I'd recommend just doing it at that time.
Right. All right. So we have a motion to accept the strategic plan draft as presented, and with the recommendation that the California Architects Board approve that.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second from Susan. So now I will open up for further discussion, and we'll start with Patricia.
I was actually going to second it. So
Okay.
But, you know, since I have the floor, yeah, I want to just kind of reiterate what Andy said. I think it summarizes what we discussed and yeah, ready to move forward on it.
Mhm. Yeah, that was my on take on this as well. That Solid did an excellent job of taking all of our comments and notes and formulating those with the staff and Trish to really summarize all of that. And I think it's an excellent plan for the next few years. And I'm looking forward to getting started on all of that. So we have a motion, we have a second. If there's no further comments or questions from the committee, I will open it up for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And I believe we have a couple of members of the public in the panelist list, but there is no one in the attendees list.
All right, if we can have them comment.
We're going to wait just a few more seconds to see if we have a request, and then we'll return to the agenda. All right, it does not look like we're getting any requests for comment. Would you like to return to the motion?
Yes, please. All right, so we have a motion to approve the draft strategic plan and recommend that the California Architects Board approve that on behalf of the LATC. So I will now call for a vote. And Pamela, if you can take the roll.
Yes, absolutely. John Residency,
Aye.
Andrew Bowden,
Aye.
Patricia Trout,
Aye.
Susan Landry,
Aye.
Pamela Braith, aye. The vote is unanimous in favor of adopting the new strategic plan.
All right, thank you very much. We will now move on to item K, discuss and possible action on draft 22-24 strategic plan objective to continue promoting the value of the profession using social media, specifically Twitter, and work to establish a LinkedIn and Instagram presence to reach a greater audience. And I will ask Trish Rodriguez to present this item.
Thank you, John. So, as you mentioned, we have gone ahead and started to get going on the objectives that were identified for this draft strategic plan. And so on April 26th, staff established public LATC profiles for both LinkedIn and Instagram. And we worked closely with DCA, Office of Publications and Design, to come up with some graphics for our social media content. And now that this objective 3.1 from the plan is, I would say, somewhat completed, we can also then continue with the other objectives identified under the public and professional outreach goal, which include pursue reciprocal sharing of social media posts with other programs, associations to increase the impact of posts and build a greater following. And then also to identify and track the number of followers on social media platforms to measure and impact the social media posts and seek ways to increase the audience. So, as I said, we are moving along with the strategic plan. There is no action required, but we welcome any feedback on this strategic plan objectives. That's that's my update. If you have any questions.
I guess we will start with Patricia.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I was just wondering, you know, I know all this information goes to the CAB. I'm just wondering if if think any additional correspondence would be appropriate. I'm thinking of the architects on the board reading goal 4.1, you know, where we say reestablishing the landscape architects board or establishing a merged board. I mean, I'm just, you know, just wondering if any additional correspondence should occur before this, you know, the information is given to the CAB. I'd be curious if other people think anything is needed or appropriate.
Patricia, are you asking specifically if our social media communication needs to go through the board for approval? Is that your question?
No, I had my hand up and we'd already kind of gone to the next, you know, to the next agenda item, but it was, you know, maybe I should bring it up later at the end of the meeting, but, you know, I just think maybe some additional correspondence needed. So it really doesn't go under item K. It should go back to the other item, but we can discuss it at the end, I guess.
All right, I apologize, Patricia. I did not see your hand up.
No worries.
Mm-hmm. All right, I guess in regards to item K, we'll start with Andy.
Thank you, John. The only question I had is that I'm looking at these photographs that have these big banners across them. I'm trying to figure out what it is that they're supposed to represent. I mean, they're in our packet, and right now I'm looking at on my computer screen as well. I mean, it's very big and bold, but there's nothing underneath it. It doesn't describe what it is. So could you give us some insight as to what the intent of these big headlines are?
Yes. So when we have a social media post, it's encouraged that some type of visual, you know, photo or image is included with that versus just, you know, typing out the words. And so we worked with DCA to come up with, well, we came up with the categories, which are listed on the cover sheet there, candidate alerts, consumer alerts, important announcements, etc. And they developed these images that we can include when we have updates in these different areas. So that was the, you know, the idea behind having these graphics created.
Okay. Are we entertaining taking comments on these graphics? Because I mean, they're big
Absolutely.
and bold and just kind of like in your face. And I mean, we're a very graphic oriented profession, and this, I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but this doesn't really represent what we do. I mean, this is I'm not trying to criticize the work that's been done, but I mean, I think there's a better way possibly of being able to communicate that rather than these big, huge, giant banners.
If you'd like to, I mean, we could certainly take comment here, but if you would like to work with staff offline, we would really appreciate some, you know, valuable professional input as to, you know, what these images should look like for the audience that we're going to be communicating with.
Okay, and where, I mean, when you're saying, you know, social media, where is this intended to go? I mean, you're going to flash this page up somewhere. And I mean, most people have, you know, they're viewing this stuff on their cell phones. So, would be in portrait mode, not in landscape mode. So they're holding the phone up, you know, to their face like this, not necessarily like that. So that would be one of my comments. I mean, if that's what the intent is. But I'm looking at it on my computer screen, and I mean, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. So
I think it will appear differently in the actual social media platform, and we can assess that as we build on this objective.
Okay. All right. Again, I wasn't trying to be critical. I was just I just wasn't sure what this was intended for. So now I know. So thank you very much.
All right, Pamela.
Thank you, John. Yeah, and I want to acknowledge the work that's been done on this, and thank you for including this because I think it gives us a look into where you are progress-wise. So thank you very much for that. I will. One of the things that I talked to Trish yesterday about, as far as a question, was kind of understanding where these were, and my comments to her. Were less about the graphic placeholder because I think we can certainly modify those to work in line with the LATC graphic font style and all of that so that things are cohesive. The concern I had was that many of the images are showing very water-loving landscapes, not certainly the direction that we're going as landscape architects or addressing the issues that we're facing with water. So I also made myself available to work with staff as needed as they're choosing images and maybe looking at ones that might be more suited to like where we're going than some of the ones that are showed currently. Lots of water and lots of lawn. So, and then maybe we could talk about any renderings that we wanted to use and what that might want to look like to better represent the profession. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Susan?
Yeah, I would ditto both what Andy and Pamela said. Not only is the banner really big of the words, but social media is very visual, graphic oriented, and to cut across the whole picture, you kind of lose the colorful, eye-catching graphic with the big bold title. And the font doesn't go with the font that we use as our name, the Landscape Architects Technical Committee. And I would recommend that we use the similar format where the first letter is capital and then the next are or higher, taller, and then the lower, smaller height letters. I agree with the image of the pictures. We've got lawn, water. The WebEx meeting looks like stairs, but it's all concrete. The color drawing is, I don't want to use the word amateurish, but to me, it should be a little more technical and legislative and regulatory, like maybe have a heavy duty construction drawing or something. I agree about the water and the lawn. That to me isn't where we're at, but I understand that we've made progress and I want to thank staff for making progress on this. My last comment is, and I don't know this because I actually am boycotting social media because they need to get their act together, but is LinkedIn something that we want to use? Is that something that organizations can use LinkedIn, or does it have to be an individual?
This is Pamela. I can answer that question. It is organizations as well as individuals, and it is a more professional platform.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why I was thinking that LinkedIn would be a good place. I know people do look at that. I get phone calls from people that say, oh, I saw your name on LinkedIn. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm not on LinkedIn, but that's okay. Oh, Susan, you don't have to be on it to be in it.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just looking at, to me, Lincoln is the professional place. And so anyways, my comment is similar to Andy's and Pamela's on the graphics. And then what I said about the words, I mean, to me, maybe like the way landscape architect technical committee is up to one side, maybe the title is only halfway or partial way, so you can really get the wow of the pictures that we have, and then go with more less lawn and less water, maybe more natives, or a technical drawing that, you know, real good hard line detail of something.
All right, Patricia, you have anything?
No, it was covered. The images have a lot of turf on them, so yeah, I don't think we want to move in that direction.
All right, Andy. All right, I guess one thing that I would like to bring up is when I saw these, I was basically interpreting these more as headings than anything else. And in speaking with Trish and the staff that's been working on here, I think the more important issue is what exactly is the messaging that we want to put out there, promoting not only the profession, but especially professional licensure. And so I think as part of our strategic planning, I think we definitely need to be looking at what does that messaging need to be, and we can work with numerous individuals and other organizations and everything to help promote that. One idea that I've spoken with Trish about, and this is partly in line with some concerns that we've had with transparency with the CLARB organization, is there a way that we can reach out directly to the other jurisdictions to share information that we're disseminating here in California in a way that allows licensees in other states to see the issues that we're dealing with, our concerns, and what our proposed actions are to address those issues, especially if we're looking at the Western states. I think there's enough reciprocity going on among the Western states that any licensee in any one of those is going to be kind of interested in what's going on in the adjoining states. And so I think that's an area where we could be thinking a little bit more about addressing those specific issues, and so those are my thoughts. So any other comments? I see your hand is still up, Andy. All right. All right, well, if there's no more questions or comments from the committee, I'll open it up for any public comment at this time.
We are open for public comment on this matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. All right, we will move on to our favorite subject matter here. Item L, Council of Landscape Architectural Registration Boards. We have two items. One is a review of the draft agenda for the upcoming annual meeting. And as part of that action, we'll be voting on letter of delegate credentials for that meeting. And then secondly, review and possible action on the 2022 CLAR Board of Directors and Leadership Advisory Council elections ballot. So with that, I will ask Trish Rodriguez to present this item.
John, you pretty much summed it up there. I don't have much more of an update. I did capture in the first cover sheet a little bit of background in the voting that occurred regarding the uniform standards. And then, as you mentioned, we have the annual meeting agenda. The CLARB is holding the meeting September 21st through the 23rd in Omaha, Nebraska. In attendance will be myself, John, and Laura. We did obtain out-of-state approval for this. And then the ballot for the president-elect and the Leadership Advisory Council, as well as the letter of delegate credentials, are enclosed for the committee to vote on, and staff will complete and submit these documents accordingly.
All right, thank you. I would like to just take a moment to speak a little bit about the vote that did occur on the uniform standard. As you know, we registered our concerns on a number of and numerous occasions in regards to what was proposed, as well as we ended up submitting an amendment to item 3 that was voted on, which had to deal with DEI, diversity, and other issues. And unfortunately, our amendment was rejected. And we stated our case before all the members in attendance, and there were most of the comments that were received were negative, which was not surprising, but it ended up being rejected outright. I'm not sure, actually, in all honesty, other than ourselves and maybe one or two other delegates even voted to consider the amendment. So, and then in regards to the other two items that were voted on, one, the uniform standard itself, and then secondly, how that standard is to be implemented. The recommendations for that was clearly adopted with little opposition. I would say that on both of those motions, there were maybe 7 or 8 jurisdictions that voted no to adopt both of those, most likely for similar concerns. But it did pass overwhelmingly. So that is done. And now moving forward, we will be dealing with issues on, we know that on the agenda for the annual meeting, there will be at least a couple sessions dealing with, okay, now that this is the uniform standard, how will this be adopted by the jurisdictions, or and so we will continue to raise our concerns when and where necessary in that regard. So with that, I would like to ask if there's any questions, comments, concerns, or anything on the agenda itself. I can tell you that based on my review, it's pretty similar to the agendas that typically are put out for these meetings. A number of the sessions are geared towards individuals that might be new to CLARB and are sort of unfamiliar with their process and some of the other things. So with that, any questions, comments, concerns? Susan?
Yeah, I find it interesting that on Wednesday, the 21st at 1:15, the topic is increasing diversity on the boards. And here they are rejecting our amendment of the diversity within the profession, the experience for the exam. I just find that very interesting.
Yeah, I think that yeah, that is an item that has been presented in the past, and it's primarily geared towards how do you recruit board members that are more diverse in either by birth or experience. And I'm not really sure, how we respond to that other than we actively recruit anybody who's interested in serving. And so that's my take on it. I guess one item, I was going to say one item of concern, and I've spoken with Trish about this, and maybe she can bring this up, is that CLARB has been encouraging licensure candidates to go directly to them to apply and take the national exam. And she just shared with me recently that she had received an inquiry from a candidate who had taken the national exams and passed, and was coming to LATC asking, what do I need to do to get my license? And had never actually gone through our process to apply for licensure prior to actually sitting for the national exams and everything. So we're starting to see, even though this is a singular case, we are starting to see where there may be some issues coming up in regards to our process. And that's one of the items that we're going to look into at the annual meeting. It might be a sidebar, but just our concern that not only in California, but a number of jurisdictions have pre-qualification requirements for licensure, and feel that CLARB is overstepping their bounds by encouraging candidates to bypass that process.
Joan, this is Trish. I just wanted to share that, staff is working with CLARB to identify, if there is an issue, and if so, how we would, proceed with making sure it doesn't happen again, if in fact it is an issue. So I will circle back with you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. So if I'm not hearing any, okay, Patricia?
Yeah, so my concern is that it's confusing. I mean, I've had people in my office ask me questions. So, I think they're kind of doing a disservice to the profession to to make it confusing. I mean, they don't license.
Right. Mm-hmm. Pamela?
Thank you, John. Yeah, to piggyback on Patricia's comments, I do think that's one place within our strategic plan, as we start to reach out to the consumer, but also our licensees, that we can make it clearer to them in that online presence what the process is. And I think especially for the younger people that are on social media exclusively, they don't go on websites. Sometimes they read their emails. But that's really where they get their information. And I say that facetiously, that's not true. The email part. But I think the social media, I mean, it's really where they get their information. And one of the things that we've done at ASLA SoCal is instigate in our e-blast, this like, did you know kind of little point that is at the very beginning of all of our e-blasts each week. And it's just little things like that, like what Patricia's talking about. Someone, says something to her like, this is confusing, I don't get this. And, and it's like, oh, yay, that's a great did you know moment, right? Where if one person's asking Patricia because they know she's on LATC, how many other people have that question? So as we're out and about, and I think people ask us questions, that's a moment for us to then take that back to staff and help provide them with, with content. And that's something that we're always doing within ASLA SoCal. And I know the other chapters in California are doing it. We talk to each other all the time, and that getting that information out so that things aren't as much of a mystery. And I think it'll behoove us too, that if we are thinking about the fact that we're going to be increasing the cost of renewals, that we get ahead of that in social media and start talking about things. I mean, there's a way for us to convey the message so that it's not a surprise to everybody. They don't just suddenly get a letter when it's time to renew their license and like, well, why did this go up? Whatever it might be. As Susan indicated, it will probably be something that catches everybody's attention. The amount, if we do easy math on that amount, that delta there. But that's the kind of stuff that we could be addressing, and I think it would really behoove us to do so.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right. Well, getting back to the agenda. I'm assuming that on this item, if there's no other questions or comments on the agenda itself, the CLARB agenda.
John, I'm sorry, this is Trish. I should have added this in the beginning. Pamela will be attending virtually on the sessions that are available, and that was offered to the LATC at no cost. And so I wanted to be sure that, I mentioned that as well. So thank you, Pamela.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that I think any of the committee members are welcome to attend virtually at no cost. That was my understanding based on the fact that we will have members there in person. So I guess my question is, do we want to address the letter of delegate credentials as part of this item, or hold off on that? And that would be a question for you, Trish.
Yeah, so what we did last year is the committee voted on the actual attendees that will be physically representing at the meeting, and we did include in the delegate letter, however, staff that would be able to attend virtually. So I think it would be fine if we wanted to identify anyone that would be attending. I would convey that message over to CLARB so that they can officially communicate with those and give them access to the meeting.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, all right. I guess what I'll do is I'll hold off on the motion until after discussion of item 2, which is the actual elections ballot itself. And and I will hold off on public comment until after that as well. So on item 2, there was a number of candidates who were listed. Only 2 of the groupings we were asked to provide a vote on. And in the case of president-elect, it's a singular choice. So I don't think that there's any real discussion on that one. In regards to the Leadership Advisory Council, there are 3 that are presented. We're asked to vote for 2. My thoughts on that are that I know none of these individuals, and as such, could not make an informed decision one way or the other on which of the 2 we should vote on. And so what my thought is maybe we just abstain from when the vote actually comes to pick any of them. But I will open it up for comments, and I see Andy has his hand up. So Andy.
Yeah, thank you, John. For the Leadership Advisory Council candidates, I personally know one of them, Ryan Collins. He and I served together on the Board of Trustees for ASLA. And so I know him, and he always seemed to be a very conscientious individual, and he was very good serving on the Board of Trustees. So I would suggest that we nominate him for Leadership Council candidate. I do not know the other 2 candidates though.
Yes, and I'll add another thought. I was a little, and had talked with Trish about this, I was a little concerned about the fact that the directors at large are all being appointed, that there's no chance for the general CLARB membership to vote on that. And my primary concern is that, again, it's an internal process of CLARBs to identify, nominate, and either appoint or place on a ballot each of these individuals. And my concern is looking through all of these candidates, irregardless, the fact that there don't really seem to be any candidates from any states that have large numbers of licensees, other than maybe one of the appointed directors at large is from Florida, and one of the candidates for the licensure or for the Leadership Advisory Council is from Texas. So I guess my concern is, it seems as far as the actual CLARB board itself, they seem, at least over the past 2 or 3 years, seem to be moving away from representation from states with large licensee populations, and are going more towards states that obviously have much smaller populations than the handful of really large states. I've always asked myself, what's behind that? Why is it that that there don't seem to be candidates that are being promoted or whatever from the larger states? Maybe people just aren't stepping up. I know last year I was on in the pool and was basically offered to be placed on the ballot for the advisory council, which I withdrew my my name from because I didn't think that under the circumstances that did us any good to be promoting people when we should have a seat on the board itself. So anyway, Andy, I see you have your hand up again.
Yeah, I'm kind of going back through past history, but as I seem to recall, they were really having issues with people volunteering for board positions. So, I mean, I served as Region 5 alternate director, which it was supposed to be a 2-year position, but it was at the end of my first year of the term, they did away with those district directors completely. So, because they felt like it just wasn't working for them. So, I think a lot of it's not like, at least from my understanding, they don't really have a secret agenda or anything like that. They just, like a lot of organizations, they have problems getting people to volunteer. So this is their way, I think, of being able to fill the voids. Because I think what it was is that they were starting to have situations where they had a lot of work to be done and it was only being done by a few people, and they were getting overwhelmed and they needed help and they just weren't getting it. People would apply for these directorships and then not show up. At least that was my opinion. I may be incorrect on that, but that was my perception of it anyway. So if you recall, we voted on this whole restructuring a couple of 3 years ago before they came up with this model law thing that we just went through. So they had to get the structure revised first, and then they went through the model law revisions. So I think they're doing their best to try and keep their house in order. It's just that it's tough. So and there were a lot of people that were, I mean, it may even still be the case where it ended up being like a 6-year cycle where if you entered into a board position, like you start off as secretary, then you're first vice president for a term, and then you're president for a term, and then you're immediate past president for a term, whatever it was, it added up to be like 6 years. And there were a lot of people saying, I don't want to commit that kind of time. I just can't. So then they were having people that were serving on their boards and then going off their boards and then no longer really had much of an interest to serve on CLARB because they weren't no longer representing their jurisdiction. So, I mean, there's a lot of kind of history behind some of that. And again, I may not be saying this correctly, but I think we just kind of got to go with the flow. But maybe while you're there and you're talking to them, maybe you can, find out a little bit more behind the scenes that you might find out. They're saying, oh yeah, gosh, John, we'd love to have you come on the board. You want to be president? We'll make you president right now. One of those kind of things. So.
Pamela?
Thank you, John. Now, granted, this was before Andy's recommendation of Ryan. So I say this with not knowing the other two candidates, but the one thing that I was looking at was their jurisdictions being Texas and Colorado. Colorado, most importantly, and we're kind of we were at least getting west of the Mississippi, which is something that we've discussed internally as an issue as far as representation. Now I know Andy, Ryan, I certainly take what Andy says as his working relationship with something strongly. So I would certainly be willing to perhaps make an adjustment and to say Colorado's more west. And I know they've had jurisdictional issues or, have had issues with their licensure recently and thus might be a little bit more sympathetic to some of the things that we've been talking about recently in regard to the model law. So that's kind of my 2 cents. But I do take Andy's word and recommendation of Ryan Conley. Thank you.
Thanks. I would just like to say that I don't know Mark Taylor personally, but I do know that in speaking with the delegates that were there from Colorado last year, that they did seem to have concerns, as you've mentioned. And so maybe that would be the direction that we would want to go in regards to our recommendations would be Mark Taylor and Ryan Collins.
I would support that.
All right. So I guess based on that, I will ask for a motion to select Leanne McAnally for president-elect and Ryan Collins and Mark Taylor for the Leadership Advisory Council. Andy?
So moved.
All right, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Susan seconds. All right, we have a motion. And at this point in time, if there's no more comments or questions from the committee, I will open for public comment.
All right, we are open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to return to the motion?
Yes, please. I guess what I should have did is I should have added or asked for a second motion for approval of the letter of delegate credentials to include myself as delegate and Trish Rodriguez as representative in attendance. I will ask for a motion.
Mr. Chair, this is Michael Kanotes. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have a motion on the floor that needs to be acted upon, and then you can proceed to the next motion.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I amend my motion?
Yes, you may.
I'd like to amend my motion to include John Roshinsky as our representative with Trish Rodriguez, and then with our election ballot as Leanne McAnally as the president-elect, and Ryan Collins and Mark Taylor as Leadership Advisory Council.
All right, we have an amendment to the motion.
Mr. Chair, okay, so it might be, at this stage, it might be more expeditious to just vote on the original motion, because now we will have to vote on the amendment and then vote on the original motion. We can proceed that way if you'd like.
Okay. All right, Andy, if you'll withdraw your amendment, we'll proceed on voting on motion 1 and then proceed to motion 2.
Very good.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's no more comment, Pamela, I'll ask you to take roll on approval of motion 1.
Certainly. John Rosinsky.
Yes.
Andrew Bowden.
Aye.
Tricia Trout.
Aye.
Susan Landry.
Aye.
Pamela Braith. Aye. The motion is voted for unanimously.
All right. So I will ask for a second motion. to approve John Roshinsky as delegate and Trish Rodriguez as representative in attendance on the letter of delegate credentials.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Susan. All right. If there's no further questions or comments, I will open for any public comment on this motion.
We are once again open for public comment on this motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to wait just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. All right, we have a motion on the table to approve John S. Roshinsky as delegate and Trish Rodriguez as representative in attendance. If there's no further questions or comments, I will ask Pamela to take a roll vote on that motion.
Yes. John Roshinsky,
Yes.
Andrea Bowden,
Aye.
Tricia Trav,
Aye.
Susan Landry,
Aye.
Pamela Brief, aye. The motion stands unanimously.
All right, thank you, everyone. All right, we will move on to item M, review of future committee meeting dates. And I will ask Trish to present this agenda item.
Thank you, John. So agenda M, review of future committee meeting dates. Next, we have the board meeting on September 16th. The location is to be determined. They are entertaining a possible hybrid meeting, which will include a physical location, possibly in Southern California, as well as virtual options. And then we have the CLARB meeting, as I mentioned, September 21st to 23rd in Omaha, Nebraska. And then our next meeting, November 1st, which will be our last one for the year. We tentatively have a location at UC Davis. Staff is working with the staff there at UC Davis to hold a in-person meeting again on November 1st. And then the ASLA conference, November 11th through 14th. And then the final board meeting of the year on December 9th. Any questions?
No, but I will, Pamela?
Oh, I had my hand up too.
Okay, well, we'll go with Pamela first.
Yes, thank you, John. I do have a bit of a favor to ask on our November 1 date. Since that is hitting on a Tuesday, I'm wondering if there's a way to move that to the 3rd or 4th, which would be the Thursday or Friday of that week. If that could be accommodated, that would be helpful.
Pamela, as far as moving it and accommodating us at UC Davis, that is definitely possible. So it would be up to the committee members to discuss their availability for those dates.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Trish.
Mm-hmm. I would like to add that I am volunteering to represent the board or the committee at the September 16th board meeting.
John?
Yes, Susan, sorry.
I cannot make November 1st unless it's virtual or in Campbell. I have a council meeting at 6 o'clock that night. So I would prefer to move it to the 3rd or the 4th, which is what Pamela had asked for also.
Patricia?
Yeah, I'd like to move it to the 4th if possible.
Yeah, my general thought is it's probably better to have our meetings at the end of the week or near the end of the week than towards the beginning. Um, it just seems that that tends to be more convenient for everyone schedule-wise.
Yeah, the 4th works better for me too.
Okay, I will work on rescheduling that and officially sending that out to everyone.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for that.
Right. Any other questions, comments, or anything on the schedule? All right. I would like to open up at this point in time to the committee if there's any other issues, items that they would like to bring up. I would like to make an announcement that I've just been reappointed to the committee for another 4 years. That took effect about a couple weeks ago. And I believe, Susan, you were planning, I know you're in your grace period, you were planning on reapplying, is that correct?
Yeah, I submitted it to my local assemblyman, and they said the state is going through a series of different appointments and that I shouldn't really push it right now. We are changing with the redistricting my assembly person, so I want to submit it before the end of the year, before he, because I don't know the new assembly person that I'd get. So basically, they said to wait, so probably next month I'll submit.
Okay.
Congratulations, John.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations or condolences,
Yeah.
what do you want to?
Yeah, you're stuck with me for another 4 years. Okay. Patricia?
Yeah, I think it was the end of our meeting, our in-person meeting. I was kind of surprised to find out how many years I still had on the board. So I'm just wondering if maybe they could give us a summary of, Trish, if you could kind of find out. I just remember Laura rattling it off, and I wasn't aware of, I guess, when my position expired. So.
Yeah, I can definitely get back to you, Patricia, offline. I believe you have served 2 consecutive terms, if not more. So would probably not be eligible for a reappointment, but again, we'll call you and sort that out.
All right. I guess if there's nothing else, I will call for adjournment of the meeting. Yes?
This is Ron Jones.
Oh, yes.
I had my hand up, but I just wanted to first let me say congratulations to you on your reappointment. But I also wanted to be, I've been on call since the beginning of the meeting, and I have to say that I applaud you and your leadership and the effectiveness of your meetings. Certainly, there are some of the challenges that you guys are going through mirror what the challenges that we have at the board as well. The only thing that I would ask going forward is that that if there are specific asks of CAB, that you guys communicate that, because as I read through the minutes, there's never any deliberate request of CAB. I would continue to ask for that level of engagement, because ultimately we should be working together to help advance your agenda. And again, I participate in the meetings more as an observer, but I want to let you guys know that my feeling is that we are working in partnership. So again, I commend you in the efforts of your committee. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I know that in regards to this budget situation, we'll definitely be reaching out here in the near future to collaborate on that issue.
Mr. Chair, this is Michael Canotes. We're still on the meeting date topic, and we're getting a little off that topic. At this point, I'd suggest that we adjourn the meeting.
Right. All right. All right, we'll do that. That's what I was just getting ready to do. So, I guess we're done, and I will call for adjournment of the meeting. I have 1:30. Thank you again, everyone, and we'll all keep in touch. So,
Thank you.
all
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
And thank you, staff, for all your help.
Take care.
Bye-bye.